All right, anybody who's tuning in, please let us know that you can hear us. We are here with Ralf Souquet. Ralph, what's going on?
Pretty good, Nate.
So, hopefully this is going to work out. Let us know right away when you're tuning in. If you can hear us, it's about a minute or two for people to get in here. So, Ralph, you're here for the, I guess, the sequence of tournaments. We have the Diamond Las Vegas Open. We have the Predator World 10 Ball. We're down to the final 16 in the Predator 10 Ball. Unfortunately, you're here with me instead of out there hitting them right now. But how did you feel about the trip so far?
Well, obviously, I had more successful trips in the past, but it's actually not going that bad. I mean, basically, coming out of a, yeah, I shouldn't say break because we had some events already, but yeah, it's still I still feel like I'm not really in the competition completely because practicing every day it's not the same than being in competition. You need the pressure, you need the punishment if you make a mistake at the table, and when you practice, that's not going to happen. So, but slowly it's starting. We had a couple of European ranking events so far, and now the three events over here in the US, which didn't make things easy because coming from Germany, being obviously one of the Schengen countries, it's not that easy to actually get to the United States. So I had to go for 2 weeks to Turkey in order to be able to actually enter the United States. Right. Yeah, paid in the butt.
It was, right? And they were strict on that too. I heard Josh Filler actually had to stay one more day in Turkey. Like he tried to leave after 13, and they're like, "No, you can't do it."
Yeah, well, I guess they were in Turkey for 14 days, but I guess their arriving flight from Germany to Turkey was right before midnight or
Oh
right
no!
borderline. And I guess their passports were stamped with the next day already, but it was maybe like 5 minutes after midnight or whatever it was. I don't know the exact details. And yeah, they are really strict.
Yeah. And all I had to do was just run a little bit faster through the airport. And
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, maybe that would have helped. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So take us through. You said you're here for three events. Obviously, the Diamond Las Vegas Open and the Predator World 10 Ball. I have to assume the third is, of course, the U.S. Open.
Yeah, correct.
And how do you feel for that one? How are you feeling going into that tournament?
Well, I mean, I played all right both tournaments here. I mean, if I would have played perfect, obviously, I still would have been in the event.
Can you check this on Facebook?
But yeah, I didn't play, well enough to make it further. I mean, I finished ninth in the Las Vegas Open. Lost in a shootout to who did I lose to? Good question. It's already been a week ago. Omar Al Shaheen.
How good is he
Uh,
playing right now?
yeah, he's playing great, but again in the shootouts, we both missed some of the. It wasn't a spot shot, but let's call it a spot shot. And yeah, I mean, while practicing, I probably made like 99 out of 100. But in the competition, I missed 3 out of 6. So
Oh no!
that didn't really help.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it's what it is.
So since we're kind of on that topic, what do you think of that format?
Um,
It's a very different format, probably, than you've ever played, right?
yeah. Um, it always has two sides of the medal. I kind of like it and I kind of hate it.
And it
Uh,
probably depends on whether you win or
well,
not.
no. In fact, I actually like it because I mean we've been playing regular tournaments for. I mean, I've been playing them over 40 years already, and the sport for some reason has not really grown to where could be. If we compare it to other sports. So I think a change of the format may help to get the game to another or to the next level.
You like it in a broad sense.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta make it exciting for the fans, for the spectators, for the people that are not in the sport. And of course, being a professional, I would rather play race to 21 because then usually the better player or the favorites probably is gonna come out good side. When you have short races and different formats, that obviously makes it different. And also, I'm not saying lower class players, but you know, mediocre players could actually, get you in danger. And, yeah, so I kind of like the format, even though it's not always good for the better players. But the stats in the future will show if the top players will always get through or not.
Certainly. And of course, I mean, it's really exciting for the fans getting to see that shootout. I would like to see, personally, I would like to see maybe a series of shots, maybe instead of the same shot over and over again. But
Yep,
it's exciting.
I mean, that's what Darren Appleton did with the World Pool Series. I think they had 5 different shots, if I remember correct. At least they had different positions, different shots, and yeah, that was probably more exciting or better for the game. Even though I wasn't a big fan of the super tight pockets. Not that I'm afraid of tight pockets, but when the pockets are getting too tight, then you have to change your game. There are certain shots that you actually can't play no more. And if I would like to play snooker, then that's what I would have chosen a long time ago. And pool is a game where you have to play with the size of the pockets, actually to create angles. And snooker is just a different game.
Yeah, and it's I mean, part of the artistry is being able to do that, right? Being able to play those shots, and that's why somebody like Judd Trump coming over for the U.S. Open, that's an interesting thing to watch. Is how well is he at cheating the pockets, and how well is he knowing those shots? Where
well, I don't know what to expect. I mean, he's definitely one of the best snooker players out there, no doubt. And the past has shown that some of the snooker pros like Tony Drago, like Ronnie O'Sullivan, they are capable of playing and doing damage. But let's see. I mean, I've never seen Judd playing pool, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
If you ended up drawing him, how do you think you'd feel?
I think
crapshoot, or you think you'd have a?
I would love to play it. Yeah.
Feel good about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think was it somebody? It was a Jim Tell projected that he'd probably be like a 730, 740 Fargo. Seems a little low, but at the same time, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
It's very hard.
I mean, I know the Fargo rates, but I don't really know how it works properly. I mean, how you get the status, or I don't want to really go too deep with any numbers. But I mean, he's obviously a great shot maker, but playing for the first time in 9-ball tournament is going to be different. I don't think that Tony Drago came up in his first event and did a great showing. So it took him a few years actually to become a good pool player too.
And he was a great one.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of Alex Pagulayan right over here. He's playing in a match. I mean, he started as a snooker player, or he played a lot of snooker in Canada. Mm-hmm. Can't think of too many others like big names. I mean, Mark White dabbled around with it a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I know Jim Rempe played. I think he actually did a few events on the Pro Tour back in the days. I don't know how good he actually finished, but yeah.
And then of course Chris Mellon, but
yeah, well, yeah,
kind of the same thing.
But again, I mean, he's been playing pool for I don't know how many years. So, and he has I believe, also an English pool background. So I mean, it's a different story. I mean, when we talk about the British guys that's converted into, let's say, American pool, they all have either an English pool background or snooker. But again, when they show up for the very first time, for the very few first events, they never had a good show. Just a different game, different strategy, different stroke. You just cannot compare it. No way.
So let's go back to original Ralf Souquet from. When did you actually get into the game? How were you introduced to the game of pool?
Well, I was, well, I don't know if I was lucky, but my parents used to have a pub with a pool table. And I was able to start at the age of 6. So I basically I'm not born on the table, but I kind of grew into it from a very young age. And I guess when you look at most players nowadays, that's how their career started. I mean, basically almost the same. At a very young age, and, I was very fascinated by by all the different colors and the fact that I actually couldn't reach obviously the table because I was too
You had
short.
to
So
carry around a milk crate to play on.
yeah, some kind of box. I can't even remember what it was. Yeah, it's been too long.
So did you fall in love with it immediately, or did it take you a little while?
Well, it took me probably about 2 years to be honest. But yeah, I mean, basically, I was infected right away. We also had a football table in our pub. That's where I started first because my dad was also a pretty good football player. And, so there, I started at age 5 already. I had three chairs that I was running back to back, and yeah, about a year later, I started playing.
I'm just picturing Ralf Souquet sprinting back and forth on a chair, and it just slides.
It's fun. Unfortunately, no pictures were taken back in the days. Forget about videos, because no cell phones existing. And
That existed one. That was the thing.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
Seems
we
like-
talking back in '74. I mean, it's not like
So when do you remember winning your first pool tournament?
that was actually in '81. 1981. It was a big event. I mean, for our region, we had like 180 players.
Wow.
Obviously, me being 12 at the time.
You won your first tournament when you were 12 years old.
Yep. And against mostly adults. I don't think there were any. There might have been 2, 3 other juniors or younger people, but they're mainly adults.
Wow. And how much did you make any money for it?
No, back then we didn't play for money. We only played for trophies and medals.
Wow.
I have to really think hard when I got my first prize money for a tournament. Yeah,
I'm gonna say,
I don't
I
even
guess
know. Yeah.
you could snap off the Euro tours, and it still seems to be pretty much that. Right?
Yeah, well,
There's a little bit better.
yeah. No, I mean, obviously, yeah, can't really.
So we're talking about literally the love of the game.
Yeah, of course. I mean, back in the days, you travel in Germany 300-400 kilometers, knowing that you can only win trophies or medals. It's just for the love of the game and just for the competition to get better, play against other players, and yeah, that's how it was. There weren't no prize money at all. You were just shooting for a bigger trophy to finish high.
Man, I think that might be like thoughts for the apocalypse if you ask an American player to not play this game for money.
Well, I guess nowadays, things are different. If there was no money involved, nobody could even imagine playing for money or for prize money. Then maybe people would still be here and play for the pride or for the love of the game. You never know. So that might be one thing why some of the players, I'm not saying having the wrong approach to the game, but it might have been better for them if they would do it for the love of the game instead of trying to maybe hustle or just, you know, trying to make money. Of course, now it's my job, so I could not do it just for the love of the game anymore. I have to make a living, or I want to make a living. Because
You want
that's something that I'm doing for 47 years now. And, yeah, I mean, it's a different uh, perspective nowadays than it was many years ago.
So if you could go back to 6-year-old Ralph, and you could have the same exact career, the same exact life, or you could go pro in any other sport. Would you still pick pool, or would you pick a different sport?
Well, I still love the sport, so I probably would go for pool again. I used to be a pretty good soccer player, to be honest. I was in like
You're a midfielder.
yeah, like in the mid um, not only in our city. It was an election from how do you call it? Like from a certain region in Germany. And at some point, I had to make a decision because the soccer games and the pool games were at the same time on the Saturday afternoon. And, I decided to go for pool. If it was good or not, I don't know. I don't think. I mean, I don't know if I would have become a professional soccer player. If that would have been the case, I would have been a multi-millionaire probably,
Yeah.
having the same results. But you never know. So, but I don't regret it. You know, I mean, I still love what I'm doing, and I probably would do the same again if I had to choose.
So that's a perfect segue into the question then. What what win are you most proud of in your career, and what do you think was the hardest win that you've ever come across? Like, what was the hardest tournament for you to win, and which one are you the most proud of? Could be the same.
Well, most proud of. I mean, I had lots of wins.
One or two.
Yeah. I think the hardest was probably to win the U.S. Open 9 ball in 2002. Um, Not because of a stronger field than others that I've played in, but the whole circumstances. I played Alex Pegulain in the finals, and I think it was the first pay-per-view um, tournament in general, and we were put on a shot clock throughout the match. I mean, at the beginning, I think we had like a 3 hour time frame where the match had to be finished. And if I'm not mistaken, it was race to 13. And but at the beginning, Barry Furman used to have like pipe core and all kinds of introductions. So saying that, they already wasted like almost an hour with that before the final actually started.
You got to get a race at 13 in 2 hours.
Yeah. So
No breaks.
so somewhere I don't know exactly what the score was when they put us first time on the shot clock. But I think it started at like 35 seconds, maybe 40. I can't even remember. Almost 20 years ago. And, you know, it was not looking good that at the time that was set up for us would be enough to finish the match. So then we put on a shorter shot clock, like 30 seconds, then 25. I mean, at the end, we were both sprinting, basically making silly mistakes because we didn't have no time at all to even think about what we were doing. I mean, it's just get there, shoot the shot, and yeah, and luckily I escaped. And I won 13-11, crazy shot, and yeah, that was probably the hardest because of the whole circumstance. And obviously, you know, winning the U.S. Open Diamond for the first time is a big deal.
Oh yeah.
But I won the World Championship 9 ball, which was, you know, tough to, well, it was tough to win because even though in the finals I won 11-1, but I remember before the match started, or before the tournament started, I was practicing with 2 or 3 players on the table and I couldn't make a ball. It was like the pockets were tighter than I was used to, and I missed like from 20 shots, I think I missed like 18 or so.
Oh.
It was horrible.
And then you go to win the tournament.
Yeah, I felt absolutely horrible going into the event. But you know, game or after match and match, I felt more comfortable. And I guess the finals was one of the better, or if not one of the best finals that I played, with a lot of runouts, and I won 11-1. So it was, but I think my best win that I could think of was to win the World Games in 2009 when I played Yang Qing Chun in the finals. And it was in front of his home crowd, was his base, so to speak, and there were like 2,500 spectators in the arena. And you know, the World Games, which is like the Olympics for the non-Olympic sports, that's how I call it.
Yeah.
It's a very big thing. And, I lost against the same player in the finals in 2001 already in Japan. So having like a revenge match against him 8 years later on his turf was just a great thing. And with that many spectators, especially with the whole German delegates from all the sports being in the arena because I think it was the very last discipline of the whole World Games. It was just yeah, something different. It was really great, and yeah,
Struggle to get 2,500 viewers for the Moscone Cup.
yeah.
That's
Well, but that's because of limitation of the arena, and yeah, Taiwan, the arena was luckily big enough. It was absolutely jam packed. That was great.
so. Is there one tournament in your career that you would look at and be like, "That's my great white whale. Like that was the one that I wanted, and I was never able to get." Is there any tournament like that?
Well, obviously,
You've won
when,
quite a few, so it's
yeah. Well, obviously, when the World 10 Ball came along, I think that started in 2010 or something like
it sounds pretty cool.
that. That was always something that I wanted to win, and my goal still is to win it one day. Any world title, to be honest. I wanted to win the world line ball also one more time because I lost it. Besides winning in '96, I lost it twice in the finals, 2001 and 2006. So those were probably one of the toughest defeats also.
Yeah.
And, yeah, but other than that, I just wanted to be, or I wished that our sport was in the Olympics. So just being part of the Olympics was a dream, but that's obviously not in my hands. It's never going to happen. If I probably
Do you think
won't
it's deserving?
be. Uh, yes and no. I mean, it's one of the toughest, if not the toughest sport when it comes, from the mental part. Does it deserve? Yeah, why not? I mean, it's
You know, so we've had this discussion on the podcast several times, and I personally don't think it's deserving because there's not enough organization. And like there's no and so even if you were to be able to lobby to get it in there, I mean who's the entity in pool that goes to the Olympic Committee and says, hey, get us in there?
yeah, you have a point there.
Maybe Matchroom, maybe, and do they want to?
That's the question.
Yeah.
I mean, Metro would definitely be able
They'd benefit from it.
yeah, to stand up and try to push it into the Olympics. If they want to be in the Olympics, I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because then they may lose power.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. They maybe cannot do the events the way they would like to see their events. But I don't know.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
Hard to know. So we'll ask you this question. So this is actually a good one, and I don't think you listened to the podcast. You would.
Somewhere said bad audio.
Yeah, I think
Regards.
I think you got to. I think I turned it up a little. That should be okay.
Okay, maybe I'll get a little closer here.
So you don't. So you probably aren't aware of this, but I asked this question to Shane. And are you familiar with the concept of a Mount Rushmore?
No.
So Mount Rushmore is basically it's like this rock formation with all four presidents on the U.S. And basically, people repurpose it to basically say, who do you think the four greatest of all time are at their chosen discipline? So Shane Van Boning, his top four of all time, the greatest pool players of all time, was Earl Strickland, himself, Efren Reyes, and you.
Okay.
He said you.
That's kind of him.
Yeah. He's like, I got to have a European on there. When are Darren and Mika and you and Torsten. And he's like, yeah, I'd go for it.
Okay, that's
So
very,
what is
very
your
kind of him.
what would be your top four of all time?
It's a tough one. Of course, Efren.
He's the GOAT.
He is the number one in my opinion. There's no doubt. But it becomes really, really tough to, I mean,
There's a lot of good options, aren't there?
yeah, I mean, I think Mike Siegel would probably be one of them. One of the greatest
One
straight
of the greatest nine-ball players of all time.
Yeah. Of course, nowadays when we look at, I mean, Shane is definitely there. There's no doubt. And I would never put myself actually in that category. That's just the way how I am. But I would really have a tough time to name fourth player, so to speak.
Too many options.
Yeah, I mean, you have Alex Pegulain, who's a very, very strong all-around player. Bustamante,
Yeah,
I mean,
Boosie's like you and you and Boosie are like the timeless players. Like he just never get any worse.
yeah, so it's really difficult. So I would probably take Boosty.
Boosty.
Yep.
Interesting. Mine is Shane. I have Efren, and I have Alex because it's just his all-around game is fantastic. And then I'm kind of stuck on the floor too. I feel like there's a huge argument for you. The way I describe your game is you never reached the highs maybe of like the greatest of all time, but your low game was better than anybody. Like you didn't play bad. You never played bad. You always were just remarkably consistent. And you always showed up and gave pretty much your best game.
Yep. Yeah, so it is difficult.
I Niels could be on there. You could be on there. It gets tough. It gets really tough. So, is there one player in your career that you've played that you just really struggled to beat? You really grinded with, and you really had a lot of great battles. You came out on the wrong side of it most of the time. And then there's some player, the opposite side, that you played with them a whole bunch and you just can't lose.
Well, I don't think there's someone that you can't lose to, but let's start with the guy that I had the most problems with. That was Boosty. I mean, he lived in Germany for, I don't know, 12 years, maybe longer. And I would say out of the first 50, I mean, I don't know the exact number, I probably lost like 45 times. So I really had a tough time beating him. But at one point, I think it was after I beat him in the finals of the BCA Open in Vegas, I kind of turned it around and I probably won like the next 25 out of 30. So, but still, I mean, he's way ahead. So let's say we played 100 times, probably more than that. He's still probably up, let's say 60. Really,
So it's
tough time beating him.
So the fun part is I really like this question because it really gives you an insight as to like kind of behind the scenes how players interact. And I've asked this question to Shane Ben Boning, you, and Johnny Archer, and all three of you said Boosty.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of kind of almost three generations of like it's it just shows how great of a competitor he is, and
that's why I mentioned him in the top four. And and on the other side, I have very, very good stats against Efren. I'm way ahead. I mean, I don't know again the exact numbers, but I'm definitely on the good side against Efren. I must be his how do you call it?
Nemesis.
Yeah, but no, not nemesis. But maybe I'll find the word later. There are just certain players that you don't like to play for whatever reason. Just have a hard time. Seems to be that one for him.
Yeah. And you always have like Darren Appleton loves playing against Shane. You always have that, right? So we'll get you out of here on this question. Is there anybody looking around at this room? Some of the younger players. I mean, it's actually incredible how many top younger players there are. Mm-hmm. Are there any players that you can look around into this room and be like, that guy has that? That's him. That's the next Ralf Souquet. That guy's going to be special.
Well, are we talking about guys that have not won a big one yet, or are we talking about the guys that are already?
We'll do both. How about both?
Well, obviously, I don't think there will be another Ralf Souquet, not because I'm special, but when we talk about the whole package, the whole behavior or the whole whatever.
Consummate professional.
So that's probably different. So I don't see that yet. But that's talking about the whole, the whole picture. When we just talk about being able to win, I mean, obviously Josh Filler is probably the greatest talent that I have seen since I'm around. There might have been other players too, but I mean, he's won already a lot. Yeah, and he's still super young, big talent. He works hard. So when we talk players that have not shown big wins yet. I mean, you have Omar. I mean,
Yeah.
he already finished high in some events. I don't think he won a big one yet. I mean, he might have
Yeah,
won
I don't
here in the
think so.
States, but I'm talking
I don't know if he's
like
even won in the
international.
States. I don't think he's won a big. I mean, he's taken second a couple times, but
Yeah. But he is definitely potential. So is the other kid from Saudi Arabia. I can't think of his name now. He's 16 years old actually in the event. And of course, you have Fedor Horst, already won the world championship. I mean, there are lots of young upcoming players, and also not to forget another German guy that probably most people don't have on the radar yet. Is Moritz Neuhausen. He's the current world junior champion,
okay.
and he will be playing in the U.S. Open next week. So,
There you go. There's your dark horse to do well in that.
well, but to me, he's not a dark horse anymore. I mean, he's a very talented player, well trained in Germany, and he's also, I believe, a sparring partner of Joshua. So
Okay.
they used to play for the same club, and yeah, he's definitely one to look out for. No, that not many people have on the radar yet.
Okay.
And Khalid is the young guy's name from Saudi Arabia. Who's playing here.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't name me on the family name now.
Yeah. Right.
The names are a little difficult.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you sitting in with me, and
No problem.
everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this. You got to get some pool time in. You got to go get your tanning on. Sounds like.
That's my wish. I don't know if the pool is actually open because it's been closed for the last 2 days. Yeah, I don't know why. They have weird reasons, like the weather. The weather's
Vegas.
gorgeous.
It's
yeah.
Vegas. Right?
I mean, there's nothing
There
wrong
mu-
about the weather.
There must have been a cloud somewhere over it, like 1,000 miles
maybe,
away.
maybe it's too hot, or maybe they have. I don't know. I'm not saying I don't want to jinx anything. They hopefully no COVID problems here within the staff, or I don't know.
Let's hope.
Yeah, just let's hope that everything is cool and smooth, and that we can finish the event here.
Yes, and the U.S. Open too.
Yeah, well, that's obviously in the different states. East Coast, and we're talking 5 hours away by plane. So
Well, I'll let you get out of here. I appreciate you very much. Thank you for sitting in, and
Thank
I
you.
hope you all enjoyed this at home. I will. Until next time, we will catch you later. Thanks, everybody.